In 1387, London's town square became a stage for one of the most horrifying punishments in medieval history. A notorious pickpocket, William the Quick, was strapped into a wooden device designed not for humiliation but for excruciating precision. The executioner turned the handle slowly, and William's screams echoed through the crowded streets as each finger was systematically crushed. But the true horror lies beneath the surface. This wasn't mindless cruelty. This was calculated surgical punishment. Medieval authorities had perfected 3 specialized methods to destroy a thief's hands, transforming them into weapons of deterrence and instruments of terror. By the end of this video, you'll uncover why some thieves chose hand mutilation over alternative penalties and learn about the modern country that still enforces hand punishments as late as 2024. Before we dive into these gruesome devices that turned human hands into living warnings, make sure your hands are steady enough to hit that subscribe button, because the story that follows will shatter everything you thought you knew about medieval justice. This tale is darker than anything you've imagined. Picture yourself in 14th century Europe. You stroll through a bustling marketplace when a faint brush against your belt alerts you. Your coin purse is gone. A master thief has vanished into the crowd, taking your week's wages in an instant. This wasn't petty theft. It was a profession, a guild-controlled operation with apprentices, specializations, and territories. A thief's hands were their ultimate tools, their fortune, their power, their livelihood. Medieval authorities faced a terrifying challenge. Whipping or imprisoning a thief didn't work. Their hands remained perfectly functional, ready to steal again. Jails overflowed, criminals networked, and society needed workers to survive. The solution: precision punishments designed to turn hands into prisons themselves. But medieval justice wasn't just punishment, it was marketing. Every crushed, mangled hand that reached for bread became a living advertisement, warning the entire community, this is what happens if you steal. The 3 devices you're about to see weren't mere instruments, they were psychological warfare, economic control, and social engineering, perfected to terrorize and reshape society. The first method appears deceptively simple: wooden stocks, almost like something from a fair. But hidden within were iron spikes, positioned with surgical accuracy to pierce the palms as the victim's weight sagged over time. Stand long enough, and your legs grew weak, driving your hands into spikes that shattered them permanently. The brilliance or terror was in the choice. Endure or lose the only tools of your trade. And the crowd. They weren't passive. Citizens hurled stones, rotten vegetables, and shoved the pillory to make victims stumble onto the spikes. William the Quick survived 8 hours before collapse. Court records describe the sound of his palms hitting the spikes as a butcher's cleaver striking bone, a sound that would forever mark him as a criminal. Symmetrical puncture wounds on the palms became identifiers, a medieval criminal registry long before fingerprints existed. But this was only the beginning. What followed would make even the hardened citizens of London question the limits of human cruelty. The pillory was only the opening act. By the 14th century, authorities realized some thieves adapted. They learned to steal with mangled hands or simply moved on to other crimes. Don't scroll away. What magistrates did to repeat offenders made the pillory look almost merciful. The next step didn't merely wound hands. It branded them forever, turning men into living wanted posters. And believe me, the branding was worse than you can imagine. First came the smell, scorched skin and hot iron. Then the screams. Colonial records show that repeat offenders faced a punishment so methodical you could read a criminal's resume by studying his palms. Massachusetts court documents lay out the procedure. The letter T burned into the right palm for a second offense. R for rogue on the left for a third. Other colonies adopted their own alphabet, B for burglar in Pennsylvania, creating an interstate system of public identification long before fingerprinting or police databases. This wasn't just marking criminals, it was economic warfare. Try buying bread with a glowing T seared into your hand. Try striking a business deal or lifting your child. Your scar told every stranger what you'd done. The brand was applied in public ceremonies designed to maximize humiliation and survival. The irons were heated until cherry red, hot enough to cauterize and prevent infection because they wanted you to live with that stigma. When 1698 court entry is chillingly precise, the hand shall be secured to a block. The brand applied for exactly 3 seconds, pressed hard enough to scar through the full thickness of the palm. 3 seconds to ruin a life. Branded men learned hideous workarounds, gloves in summer, furtive handshakes, sleeves pulled low. Some even mutilated themselves to blot out the letters. Others stooped to theft, despite the mark. So authorities kept innovating. If pillorying didn't stop theft and branding failed to fully deter, magistrates moved to the ultimate solution: systematic destruction. What followed was surgical amputation dressed as justice. Enter the worst mechanism of all, what a 1532 German executioner Franz Schmidt called the hand engine. In his diary, Schmidt described a spring-loaded contraption so clinical it read like an engineer's notes. 2 iron plates, 4 adjustable screws, measurement markings to calibrate force. Turn the screws, and the device crushed each finger bone in sequence, smallest joints first, working back to the wrist. Total procedure time, approximately 47 minutes. 47 deliberate minutes of breaking of bone by bone. Schmidt's entries are disturbingly meticulous. He tested pressures on cadavers to perfect the settings, calculating exactly how much force would shatter bone without killing the victim from shock. A ratcheting mechanism prevented escape once the crushing began. The device's purpose was precise: inflict maximum pain and permanent disability, while keeping the condemned conscious to witness every fracture. Victims watched their livelihoods dissolved, every crack, each splintered bone, right in front of their eyes. Public spectacle followed. Nuremberg court records recount Wilhelm Bauer, a repeat thief, forced into the hand engine before 400 townspeople. His screams carried for blocks. His agony was meant to be a lesson audible down the street. And the aftermath was as calculated as the torture itself: crippled hands, ruined trades, and a body marked forever as a cautionary emblem. This was the logic of medieval justice: surgical precision applied to social control. When the simple tools of punishment failed, authorities engineered instruments to destroy the very means of thievery and broadcast the result to terrify an entire community. Survivors were left with hands twisted into grotesque claws, bones fused at impossible angles, fingers that could no longer grasp with precision. They became living warnings, paraded through marketplaces, their mangled limbs visible to all. Some succumbed to shock or infection, but most survived, only to face a far crueler reality. They had chosen this mutilation themselves. Wait, chose it? Yes, and this is where the story turns utterly shocking. Professional thieves didn't merely endure these punishments. Many volunteered for them. They lined up, begged for it, deliberately choosing the hand-crushing device over the alternative. Why? Because the alternative was far worse. The alternative, death. Not any quick death, but public execution by hanging, often preceded by hours of tortures that made the hand engine look merciful. Master thieves had to calculate carefully, accept permanent disability, and survive as a crippled beggar, or risk a 50-50 chance of surviving the gallows, with the other half meeting a slow, agonizing strangulation. Court records from 15th century Germany reveal the brutal mathematics. Hangings had roughly a 47% survival rate due to rope failures, executioner errors, or last-minute interventions. But survival didn't mean freedom, it meant enduring further torments. Master thief Heinrich Goldfinger Zimmermann's 1489 confession, preserved in Munich archives, explains the twisted logic. I choose the hand engine over the rope, because I have seen men dance in the air for 20 minutes before dying. I have seen ropes break, leaving men half-strangled, only to be hanged again. Better to live without hands than die with them. This grim choice created an underground economy historians have tried to bury. Professional thieves formed networks of voluntary mutilates, disabled ex-criminals who became informants, guards, and intelligence gatherers for the very authorities that destroyed their hands. Think about the psychology. Your hands no longer worked for theft, but your knowledge made you invaluable to law enforcement. Schmidt's diary confirms the scale. In 1 year alone, he processed 23 thieves through the hand engine. 19 survived, now serving as informants for the City Watch, identifying new criminals, mapping networks, and demonstrating publicly the consequences of theft. The system eventually cannibalized itself. By 1550, so many thieves chose mutilation over execution that organized criminal networks collapsed. There simply weren't enough functional hands to maintain the sophisticated theft operations that had terrorized medieval cities. The ultimate irony, surgical destruction of hands, gave rise to new crimes, fraud, blackmail, confidence schemes that required no manual dexterity at all. By 1600, hand-crushing devices vanished, not due to mercy, but because they had worked too well. They had eliminated the very criminals they were meant to punish, forcing crime to evolve beyond physical mutilation. Medieval justice achieved its objective through the most brutal means imaginable, inadvertently proving that the human mind could be far deadlier than the human hand. And the story doesn't end there. In 2024, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and other nations still practice judicial hand amputation for theft. Just last month, a 23-year-old man in Riyadh had his right hand removed for stealing a $200 mobile phone. Modern methods are clinical and anesthetized, but the principle remains identical. Destroy the tool, curb the crime. History proves the effectiveness of targeting specific body parts to reshape criminal behavior. The question isn't whether it worked, it did. The question is, how far would you go to survive? The question that haunts every era is this: should a civilization define justice as the systematic destruction of human bodies, even when those bodies belong to criminals? Think about it. If you were faced with life in prison or the permanent loss of your hands, which would you choose? Would you accept crippling mutilation to survive or risk a slow, agonizing death? And more importantly, what does your choice reveal about the very nature of justice? Does true justice lie in retribution, deterrence, or survival at any cost? These aren't just historical hypotheticals. They force us to confront the brutal realities of power, law, and human resilience. Medieval societies engineered cruelty with surgical precision, creating punishments that were both psychological and physical, turning criminals into living warnings and shaping the rules of survival for centuries. I want you to pause and reflect. What would your answer be? How would you weigh survival against integrity, body against freedom, life against pain? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear your perspective on justice, morality, and the extremes societies will go to enforce law. And don't scroll away yet. Make sure to watch my next video, where I reveal the medieval punishment so terrifying it made the infamous hand crusher look almost merciful. Trust me, the story will change the way you see the history of crime and punishment forever.